It was a busy afternoon at the airport. People rushed around with luggage, some laughing, some arguing, some tired from long journeys. Flight 227 to West Africa was ready to board. A few passengers waited in the first-class lounge, sipping drinks and scrolling on their phones. Among them sat a quiet man dressed in a plain black caftan. His shoes were clean, but not flashy. His bag was small, his face calm, unreadable. He said nothing. He watched everything. He held a first-class ticket. A few people looked at him once, then twice. A black man alone in the first-class lounge, dressed simply. He didn't seem like a businessman, didn't look rich, didn't even have a laptop bag or a wristwatch, but he sat there peacefully waiting for his flight like everyone else. When the call came, "First-class passengers, please proceed to Gate 4, he stood up and joined the line. The flight attendant at the gate was a slim woman with bright red lipstick and golden hair tied in a bun. Her name tag read Clara. She smiled brightly at the man in front of him, a white man in a designer suit, and scanned his ticket. "Welcome aboard, sir," she said with charm. Then came the quiet man. She looked at his dark face, then at his simple clothes. Her smile faded instantly. "Excuse me, sir," she said, blocking him with her arm. "You must be lost. This lane is for first class." He quietly handed her his ticket. She stared at it, her face tightened. Cat 2A. "This must be a mistake," she muttered, almost to herself. She looked him up and down, her eyes filled with disbelief. "Sir, this flight is not for the person of your color. You can't sit here." People nearby turned to look. "Excuse you?" he asked calmly. Clara's voice grew louder. "I said, this flight is not for someone of your color. You must have booked economy by mistake. Maybe someone used your card." A gasp came from a young woman behind him in line. A man in business clothes frowned deeply. Phones started to rise, passengers beginning to record, but Clara didn't stop. "Let's not waste time, sir. We'll refund your money," she said, waving her hand as if brushing dirt off her uniform. "Now, kindly step aside. You're holding up the line still." The man didn't move. He looked at her quietly, his eyes steady but kind. "I bought a first-class ticket. That's my seat. 2A, she scoffed. "You can't even pronounce the name of this airline. And you want to sit in first class." The crowd grew restless. A junior attendant, a young man in glasses, walked over. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Clara leaned in. "This guy's trying to force his way into first class with a fake ticket," she whispered. The junior attendant took the ticket and scanned it with the handheld device. A green checkmark appeared with a soft beep. "It's valid," he said quietly. Clara's face twisted with anger. "It doesn't matter," she said. "Look at him. Do you really think he belongs in seat 2A? By now, 5 or 6 people were filming. The man stepped aside to let a mother with a baby pass through. He turned back to Clara. "I'm not here for drama," he said calmly. "I just want to take my seat." The junior attendant looked troubled. "Clara, maybe we should just—" "You want to lose your job over this?" she snapped. The quiet man sighed and stepped forward. "I will take my seat now," he said. Clara stood frozen. She didn't know what to do. Her authority was slipping away in front of the passengers. Finally, she stepped aside but hissed, "Don't say I didn't warn you. We'll see how long you last in that seat." He walked in quietly. The passengers stared, some in support, others in confusion. The cabin was calm and cool. The air smelled of leather seats and soft cologne. Seat 2A was by the window. He placed his bag in the overhead bin and sat down. From his pocket he took a small notebook and pen. He began to write. Not a word, not a frown, not even a sigh. Behind him, Clara entered the cabin. She watched him for a while, then turned to serve drinks to other passengers, ignoring him. 3 rows away, the French CEO, François Delicourt, adjusted his tie and leaned back in his seat. He glanced at the dark-skinned man briefly, but said nothing. A soft chime came from above. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for takeoff. Please fasten your seat belts." The man closed his notebook and looked out the window as the engines roared to life. High above the clouds, the world below disappeared. But inside that plane, a storm was just beginning. No one, not the French CEO, not the rude flight attendant, not even the passengers watching silently, knew who the quiet man in C2A really was. But they would find out soon. And when they did, the shame would shake them to their bones. The airplane soared above the clouds, cutting through the sky like a silent arrow. Inside the first-class cabin, the mood was calm on the surface, but underneath it was tense. The quiet man in seat 2A sat with his seatbelt fastened. He didn't ask for champagne. He didn't stretch his legs like the others. He simply stared out of the window with deep, thoughtful eyes. He looked like someone who had seen many things, but carried them quietly inside his heart. Flight attendant Clara moved around the cabin offering drinks and snacks. Her face wore a plastic smile for everyone except him. When she got to see at 2B right beside him, she paused. The passenger there, an older French woman with pearl earrings, smiled politely and asked for green tea. Clara nodded. "Of course, ma'am." Then she turned sharply to the man in 2A. "What would you like to drink?" she asked, voice flat and cold. He looked up gently and replied, "Just water, please." She rolled her eyes. "We have sparkling and still. Pick one." "Still water is fine," he said calmly. She brought his water, but unlike the others, she didn't place it on a napkin. She didn't smile. She didn't even say, "Here you go." She simply dropped the bottle on the tray table and it nearly fell over. He picked it up, fixed the cap, and took a sip. Still calm, still silent. Across the aisle, François Delors noticed. He frowned. Something about the way Clara treated this man didn't sit right with him. François had met arrogant people in business, but this wasn't pride. It was quiet strength. The man hadn't spoken more than 10 words since boarding, but there was something royal about him. Clara came by again, handing out hot towels. She skipped seat 2A entirely. The man didn't complain, but passengers were noticing. The woman in 2B whispered, "Why does she keep ignoring him?" "He's not causing trouble." The man in 3C murmured to his wife, "Maybe she thinks he's not supposed to be here." Meanwhile, in the economy cabin, people laughed, babies cried, and the plane rocked gently with light turbulence. Back in first class, something was about to happen. A younger attendant, the same one who had scanned the man's ticket earlier, quietly approached Clara at the front of the cabin. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. She sighed. "What now?" He leaned closer. "You need to stop treating that man like he's invisible. People are noticing. They're filming." "So," Clara snapped, "let them film. Let the whole world see. That seat doesn't belong to people like him. He bought it. Fine. But he doesn't belong here. He knows it. I know it." The junior attendant looked alarmed. "You're crossing a line." "No, he crossed the line," Clara whispered harshly. "People like him should know their place. They want to act like kings and sit in places they don't belong. Then let them face the pressure." Suddenly, the plane shook a little harder. A sharp bump caused a few passengers to grip their armrests. Clara turned and quickly walked back toward the first-class cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain said over the speaker, "we're passing through a small storm. Please stay seated and keep your seatbelts fastened." Clara moved down the aisle, checking belts. When she reached seat 2A again, she stopped. "You better buckle up tight," she said with a slight smirk. "Wouldn't want you flying out of your seat." The man looked at her and calmly replied, "Thank you for the reminder." She wasn't expecting that. Her face hardened and she moved on. As the turbulence passed and calm returned, lunch was served. Trays of fancy meals were placed before the first-class passengers. Clara dropped a tray in front of the man. "Here, hope this meets your standards." He looked at the tray and nodded. "Thank you." Francois had seen enough. He leaned toward Clara and said quietly, "Excuse me, but why are you treating that man with such disrespect?" Clara's face turned red. "Sir, please mind your business." Francis didn't back down. "I am. This is my business. I paid for peace, not to watch you insult a paying passenger." Other passengers nodded. Someone in the back of the cabin clapped once. Clara turned on her heels and stormed to the galley. Inside, she paced like a lion. How dare they defend him? She whispered to herself, "Who does he think he is?" In seat 2A, the quiet man closed his eyes and breathed slowly. He was used to storms, both in the sky and on the ground. But this storm had a different weight. This was not just about color. It was about dignity, about silence being tested, about patience under fire. He reached into his coat pocket and touched a small folded piece of cloth. It was the national emblem of his country. He didn't wear it today. He didn't need to. It was in his heart. Suddenly, there was a call on the intercom. "Cabin crew, prepare for arrival. 30 minutes to landing." The passengers sat up straighter. Trays were cleared, bags were zipped, but tension remained in the air. Clara returned to first class one last time before descent. She stood near 2A, arms folded, staring at him. "I hope next time you choose the right cabin," she said coldly. "You're lucky we didn't throw you out before takeoff." He looked up. His voice was steady. "Sometimes the seat we choose is not just about money. It's about what we represent. I will continue to choose this seat, not because of comfort, but because of what must change." His words echoed in Clara's ears. She didn't understand them fully, but they made her feel small. As the plane began to descend, the clouds parted, and the city lights of Ouagadougou sparkled below. Passengers prepared to exit. The man in 2A picked up his small bag, stood tall, and waited his turn. No one, not Clara, not Francois, not even the curious passengers recording, knew that when the wheels touched the runway, the quiet man would step out, not just as a passenger, but as the most powerful man on that plane. The wheels of the plane touched down with a gentle bounce. The lights inside the cabin turned on, and a voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ouagadougou. Please remain seated until the aircraft comes to a complete stop." Passengers clapped lightly. Some were glad the flight was over. Others stretched and yawned. But in first class, all eyes were still on one man. Seat 2A. The quiet African man had said nothing the entire flight, even after being insulted, ignored, and mistreated. He sat calmly like a mountain that refuses to move. Clara, the head flight attendant, was not done with him. As people began to unfasten their belts and collect their bags, Clara walked up to him again. Her voice was low but filled with poison. "I wish you never entered this flight," she said harshly. He looked up slowly but said nothing. She leaned closer, making sure no one else could hear. "You smell like someone who hasn't taken a bath for a whole month," she whispered with a cruel smirk. "You think sitting in first class makes you clean? It doesn't. It just makes this cabin stink." He blinked once. Still, he said nothing, but his eyes, deep and full of silent strength, met hers with calm power. The woman in sat 2B, the older French lady, saw Clara leaning in. She couldn't hear everything, but the look on Clara's face said it all. "That's enough," she said firmly. Clara turned to her. "Stay out of this." The woman shook her head. "Number, I won't. You're out of control and you've gone too far." Clara laughed nervously. "You think he belongs here? Look at him." François Delicourt, the French CEO, stood up slowly. He had been silent long enough. "Clara," he said, "you have embarrassed yourself. You have embarrassed this airline, and you've embarrassed all of us." Clara froze. "He has done nothing wrong," Francois continued. "He paid for this seat, behaved with grace, and showed more dignity than you could ever understand. You may not know who he is, but I can tell. He is a man of great worth." Clara's face turned red with anger and shame. "I did what I thought was right. We have standards here." "No," Francois said sharply. "You have prejudice. That's what you have." By now, other passengers had gathered near first class. Some had heard parts of the argument. Others had seen it all from start to finish. Several were still recording. The cabin door opened. A soft breeze from outside entered the plane. Airport staff waited below with steps leading to the ground. But something was different. Down on the tarmac, a black car with dark windows was parked near the aircraft. 5 uniformed soldiers stood at attention. A long red carpet had been rolled out beside the steps. Passengers leaned toward the windows. "Is there a celebrity on this flight?" someone asked. "Maybe a royal family member," another said. Clara looked confused. "We didn't get any VIP alert." Then something strange happened. The junior flight attendant who had scanned the man's ticket earlier walked up to Clara. He looked nervous but serious. "Clara," he said, holding out his phone, "you need to see this." She grabbed the phone and looked at the screen. It was a photo. Her face dropped. It was the man in seat 2A, but not in an airplane. He was wearing a military uniform, standing before a crowd of thousands. Flags waved behind him. Soldiers saluted him. The title below the photo read, "President Ibrahim Traoré, President of Burkina Faso." Clara's hand began to shake. She looked up quickly, searching for the man. He was standing now, lifting his bag slowly from the overhead bin. "No, no, this can't be," she whispered. He walked toward the exit without a word. "Wait," Clara called, her voice suddenly soft. "Sir." He stopped and turned around. Her lips trembled. "I didn't know. I didn't mean to." President Ibrahim Traoré looked at her. His eyes held no hate, no revenge, only quiet truth. "Would it have made a difference if you had known?" he asked gently. Clara opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Respect is not a gift for the powerful," he said. "It is a duty to every human being." Then he turned and walked out of the plane. The sun outside was bright. The soldiers saluted sharply. One opened the car door, but the president didn't enter immediately. He turned around and looked up at the plane. Inside, passengers watched through the windows. Some had tears in their eyes. Others shook their heads in shame. Francois stepped out and caught up with him. "Mr. President," he said, his voice humble, "please forgive us. I had no idea. You carry yourself with such humility. It is truly admirable." President Traoré smiled gently. "Sometimes we must walk low to see how deep people's hearts are." They shook hands. Back inside the cabin, Clara sat in an empty seat, her face pale, her hands shaking. The junior attendant stood beside her. "You didn't just insult a president," he said softly. "You insulted all of us who look like him." The captain came out of the cockpit. "Prepare a written report," he told her, "and expect to be questioned." Clara buried her face in her hands. Outside, cameras flashed. The red carpet rolled on, and the quiet man from seat 2A entered his black car, not with pride, but with purpose. He had flown as a passenger, but landed as a lesson. The news spread like wildfire. Before the plane even finished unloading, videos had already gone viral. Passengers had posted clips of the incident on social media. Clara shouting, the quiet man sitting calmly, Francois defending him. The moment the truth came out, the internet was on fire. People were angry, shocked, inspired. Many were ashamed. Inside the airport, as other passengers moved through immigration and customs, the staff scrambled. Security officers stood straight. Airport workers whispered and pointed. "Did you hear?" He was on our flight. President Ibrahim and Clara insulted him. Meanwhile, Clara stood in a small office near the jet bridge, her face pale, her hands cold. The airline manager paced in front of her. "Do you realize what you've done?" he snapped. "I didn't know," she whispered. "That's not the point," he said. "It's not about who he is. It's about what you said. This flight is not for the person of your color. You smell like someone who hasn't bathed in a month." She looked down, tears rolled down her cheeks. "I was just doing my job," she said weakly. "No," the manager replied firmly. "You were abusing your position and you've done it before." Clara gasped. "What do you mean? You think we haven't gotten complaints? You think this is the first time?" She froze. Outside, President Ibrahim Traoré sat in his car. The airport director stood beside him, sweating, trying to explain. "Mr. President, we are deeply sorry." "If we had known," Traoré raised his hand gently. "That's the problem," he said. "You only care when you know." The director fell silent. "I flew today not to test anyone," Traoré continued. "I flew as a simple man. I wanted to feel what the people feel, and now I know." He looked out the window at the airport building. "That woman did not insult just me. He said she insulted millions of Africans, poor and rich. She showed us how deep racism still lives in some hearts." The airport director nodded. "She has been removed from duty." Traoré said nothing. His silence spoke louder than anger. A reporter rushed forward, calling out, "Mr. President, will you press charges?" He looked at her with calm eyes. "No," he said. "I don't need to jail anyone to make a point. The whole world has seen what happened. Let that be enough." Back inside, Clara sat alone. Her uniform now felt like a heavy costume. Her phone buzzed again and again. Hundreds of messages, some from strangers, others from old friends. "You are trending for the wrong reason. How could you say such things? I hope you're ashamed of yourself." One message stood out. It was from her own mother. "I raised you better than this." "I am disappointed." Clara dropped the phone. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run away, but she had to face it. All of it. Later that evening, a press conference was held outside the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. President Traoré stood on the stage wearing his military jacket now, with the national flag pinned to his chest. The media had gathered, lights flashed, microphones pointed. He spoke slowly, clearly for the whole world to hear. "This morning I boarded a plane as a regular passenger," he began. "I did not wear a title. I did not carry an entourage. I did not need people to know my name." He paused. "But what I received was more than poor service. It was hate, disrespect, and shame. Not for me, but for those who think power only wears a suit and tie. For those who believe that skin color decides status." He looked directly into the camera. "I want the world to understand no human is above another. You don't need to be a president to be treated with respect. You only need to be a person." The crowd clapped. Some shouted, "Yes!" Others wiped tears from their eyes. Taraway raised his hand again. "I forgive her," he said. Gasps filled the air. "Yes, I forgive her," he repeated. "Not because I'm weak, but because the lesson has already been delivered. She has seen the consequences of her actions. Now she must choose to grow or remain small." He ended the speech with a final line. "May we never forget. True power is not in the title you carry, but in the way you treat others." The audience stood and clapped. That night, news channels across Africa and Europe replayed the story again and again. People shared it in schools, homes, offices. Students spoke about it in class. Teachers used it as a lesson. Judge no one by their appearance. Everyone deserves respect. You never know who someone truly is. Even Clara, still locked in her room, watched the speech. Her eyes red, her face tired. She couldn't sleep, she couldn't eat. The guilt was heavy, but one thing stuck in her heart. I forgive her. It broke her. She sat down and wrote a letter by hand. No cameras, no PR team, just her words. Dear President Ibrahim Traoré, I am sorry not because you are a president, but because you are a human being and I failed to treat you as one. I was blind with pride, poisoned by ignorance. You showed me the kind of strength I've never seen. You had every right to humiliate me, yet you forgave me. I will never forget this lesson, and I pray that one day I can prove I've changed. Clara, she sent the letter. She didn't know if he would ever read it, but somewhere deep inside she hoped. At the presidential palace in Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traoré sat in his office. The sun poured through the window behind him. A letter lay on his desk, Clara's handwritten apology. He read it again. The words were simple, honest, no excuses, just regret and a promise to grow. He folded the letter and placed it gently in a drawer. A knock came on the door. "Come in," he said. His assistant entered with a file. "Mr. President, we've received hundreds of letters, support from citizens, apology messages from airline staff, even artwork from children. The people were touched, sir." He nodded. "I didn't plan for this to happen. I only wanted peace that day." "I know, sir, but your silence spoke louder than 1,000 speeches." President Traoré stood and walked to the window. "I've been thinking," he said. "It's not enough to forgive. We must also educate. What happened that day is not just a mistake. It's a mirror showing us what still exists in many hearts." He turned to his assistant. "Prepare a national campaign," he said. "We'll call it the Dignity Project. Let's teach respect in schools, train customer service teams, and promote kindness across all levels. Let this story be more than news. Let it be change." The assistant smiled. "Yes, Mr. President." Meanwhile, in France, Clara had not returned to work. She had been suspended without pay while the airline reviewed the case. But she was not wasting time. Every day she volunteered at a local shelter for immigrants and refugees. She listened to their stories. She served them food. She cleaned bathrooms and folded bed sheets. She no longer looked at people the same way. One morning, while handing out blankets, she noticed a little African girl sitting quietly in a corner, hugging a torn teddy bear. Clara sat beside her. "What's your name?" she asked softly. The girl looked up with wide eyes. "Aminata." "That's a beautiful name," Clara said, smiling. "People at school call me dirty," Aminata whispered. Clara's heart broke. She took a deep breath. "Then they are wrong," she said. "You are not dirty. You are beautiful, just like your name." That night, Clara cried again, not from shame, but from realization. The damage caused by words could last years, even in small hearts. She wrote again to the president. "Dear Mr. President, I don't expect another reply, but I wanted to let you know I'm changing. Not because I was caught, but because I was wrong. Every day I meet people who remind me of you. Quiet, gentle, but full of worth. I see them now, truly see them. Thank you for your silence." It shouted loud enough to wake me up. Clara. Months later, President Traoré visited a university in Ghana to speak on leadership and character. Students filled the large auditorium. Cameras were set. Journalists waited with pens and microphones. He walked onto the stage, dressed in his usual simple clothes. The hall went silent. "My story is not special," he began. "Millions of people face disrespect every day simply because of how they look. Not because they've done wrong, but because someone decided they weren't good enough." He paused, looking around. I was called dirty, told I didn't belong, laughed at, not as a president, but as a man with dark skin. And I stayed silent, not because I couldn't speak, but because I wanted to listen. The students leaned forward. "Listen," he said firmly, "to the pain of others, to your own thoughts, to the voice in your heart that tells you everyone deserves respect." He ended with a quote written behind him on the screen. "If your power makes others feel small, it is not power, it is weakness." The audience stood. Applause thundered through the hall. That same quote was later painted across the school walls, printed on shirts, and shared on posters in airports around the world. If your power makes others feel small, it is not power, it is weakness. Years later, many would look back at that one flight as the day the world paused to reflect. The day a simple man in Satua taught the world about dignity. The day a proud woman broke and rebuilt her heart. The day silence roared louder than hate. And so the lesson lived on, not just in books or speeches, but in how people treated the ones sitting beside them, whether in first class, economy, or on the street. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like, share with your friends, and turn on the post notification bell so you'll be the first to know whenever we upload a new video. Thank you for watching.